I'm Antoinette Davis. I am from EKU, Eastern Kentucky University. I am part of the Mathematics and Statistics faculty there. And today's topic is cultural competence in mathematics education. How often do we not see this represented in our classrooms? When I thought about this topic, I decided to do an experiment of sorts, just this semester, just to see how it worked. And every single class, the first 5 to 7 minutes, I go through each culture, one at a time, of course, and I discuss what it means to my students in my class. The last class that I had, which was on Monday, I discussed with students the artist Selena. A lot of them had never heard of her. And I talked about her career, and at the same token, what happened to her later demise. But we don't see that in math. We don't see people trying to integrate culture into the curriculum. And when we don't see that, what happens to students who walk into our classrooms of various diverse cultures? What happens to them? They're still trying to find their place. Where do I fit in this classroom? That's what this presentation is about. Culture. As you can tell, all of us come from a particular culture, and it means a lot to us. When we see it represented, for example, in a certain presentation, we have to go to that presentation. For example, if I saw someone who had a presentation on culture as it relates to Skittles, I would leave my own presentation and go to that because I love Skittles. I love Skittles. When we think about culture, it's ways in which a group of people make meaning of their experiences through their language, their experiences, of course, social practices. For example, if I have a student that's in my class who happens to be a Spanish-speaking student, I am not a Spanish-speaking instructor. So when that student talks, it may be perceived to me that the student's talking really, really fast, but this is their native language. So I have to find ways to integrate that into my classroom. For example, I may have that particular student give a life lesson on where they grew up. What does math mean in your village? What does it mean in your household? And that gives me a little bit of background on how to teach that student. Oftentimes, teaching math has a lot to do with background, and we're building on what they previously learned. Cultural inclusion. When students feel represented, especially their cultures, they're more likely to be engaged. They're more likely to think about, hey, how can I apply this at home? Or how can I take this home to mom and dad who've never seen this before? Think about food demonstrations. I had a graduate school class where we were talking about English and math and how it relates to the high school classroom. And I ended up having a classroom that had a lot of students who were Indian, students who were Hindu, students who were Spanish, African American, Caucasian. Best part about that, which was my favorite part, was the food. I was going to get to taste each individual food. Why? Because it matters to them and their culture. And I wanted to know, what does it mean for me to taste this particular food? Where did this come from? And how do you use it now in your current classroom? Or even in your home as well? How do we change America's classrooms? What do you think? How do you change America's classrooms? What do you think is wrong with it, first of all, as it relates to culture?
We're not recognizing the homes that students come from and their funds of knowledge and how they can bring that in the classroom. And that has to become part of what a classroom is. We're a community of knowledge. I mean, I teach doctoral students from all over the world, but it has to be part of the classroom. Like, what do they do in your country about even how they teach math, or what subjects are taught when, or whatever. I mean, we can use something about the math knowledge, but we can relate it to their own home.
That's very true. Anyone else? How can we change America's classrooms?
I think just recognizing what does mathematics, how do we make mathematics meaningful to students in the culture that they're living in, or the culture that they're coming from. I think that making it relatable without going to pandering or relying on the stereotypes or anything like that.
And I try to find ways to mix cultures. My students and I, we had a discussion on the relationship between Michael Jackson and Paul McCartney. My students didn't even know that there was one. They really didn't know. And they thought about, oh, we didn't know that Paul McCartney knew Michael Jackson or vice versa. And I said, oh yeah, they did many songs. And they're like, so tell us some more talk to students about celebrities, especially ones that they know about, they want to know more. And I talk to them about friendships and different life lessons that they can use, even if it's outside of math. Why? Because it's occurring here. It's showing them that there's connections, even in places that we don't think that there are connections.
One of the things that emerged in my classroom about math is that math is sometimes, the kids are better in math in many other countries than they are in the US. And especially girls have more confidence. I mean, I've done this because I have these international students, but math is really a topic that we need to address in this country. So what makes girls in Mexico do better in math than girls in the US? Or in Jordan, I have a new doctoral assistant who's from Jordan. I mean, he says, well, they're doing really well in math in my country. So what are we doing that discourages people from doing well in math?
You know what's interesting about that is it's not only cultural in terms of where is math within a cultural, but there's also cultural attitudes towards math.
Yeah,
And this person named Ling Ma wrote a really interesting book about how math
I've
is
read her
hard.
book.
It's like
I've read her book.
they say, look, this is not easy for anybody. And this idea that everybody is going to struggle with math, it's not that certain people can do it, certain people can't do it, but it's hard, but it's useful, and we're going to do it. And so just even acknowledging the cultural assumptions and maybe even challenging some of them.
Is that Lee's mom?
I think that's
book
what
on
it is.
teachers.
Yeah, this is the Chinese teachers versus American.
It's good.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
They're really different, and they're valued differently, and there's so much culture
Very much so.
in math.
I even look at when I think about celebrities as it relates to my students, they think that everybody that they see on television is rich. Why is it needed?
Math is particularly bad because of its history of white leaders from Germany or something, or European American, or I don't know. But it's particularly bad because it's taught, Julian Weisglass is somebody that talks about this, I don't know him. But it's like taught in a way that gets rid of all the context and all the life. And so you really have a big battle to change the way we do math.
It's almost like you got students going to sleep because it's so boring.
Oh, I know. We do lots of projects. I'm part of the MC Squared. I'm related. But we do so many projects where we start and everybody, I would fall asleep in that classroom where a teacher's just standing up there lecturing, and that's not what the kids need.
They need more hands-on.
Yeah.
And with that hands-on, like in the first presentation, students begin to become a part of their own construction. I grew up on Legos. So that was one of the construction parts of why I went into math, because I knew I could create. Culturally relevant teaching practices connects meaningfulness in home and school experiences. Oftentimes students, as you mentioned, when they're at home, how do I connect that to school? How do I make sure that when I'm in school, I can take what I learned in school back home? A lot of students have parents who are not at their level of learning, but they still send them to school. And a lot of students, when they think about going to school, hey, I want to teach my parent about algebra in the least possible way.
In the most fun.
The most fun way. With videos. That's one of the greatest parts of Prezi is I can integrate video entry. And students are able to enjoy it because after they're done with my class for the day, if they're, say, tired when they come to my classroom, they can go back, because I send these out after every single class. They can go back and review and try to understand what's going on. Group activity. Group activity. The name game. The name game. So, I'm going to divide you all into two groups, just two groups. It says each person will write their full name on a piece of paper and share the origins of your name.
I have a card here.
You have a card already?
So
Got one? You have one? All right.
my name actually comes from Norway.
All right. So, I'll have a group of 3 and a group of 2. You can pick your own group, a group of 3 and a group of 2. Write your full name on a piece of paper. Here's one. One right here. It's actually 2.
Oh, awesome.
Full name on a sheet of paper. And what are the origins of your name? I.e., were you named after someone?
white bird, because it was Swedish and Danish, and white bird was some German person that was probably at the gate and made it white bird.
All right, so now we know who you are and where your name came from. Who else would like to go next? On all responded one.
Okay. I'm Sandra Williamson Bentley. Sandra, my dad was Alexander, so I'm named after him. And Williamson in the 1500s, William Mackay's son changed our name to Williamson. And my married name is Ledley, and there comes from an English word of leadlighters. So,
Wow. Who would like to go next?
My full name is Teresa Yvonne Sines. Teresa, when my mother was 15 years old, she was dying of pneumonia, and they had come and given her last rites. And she, back in the day, they had curtains instead of closet doors, so it's a curtain. And she noticed at the top, she, in her, I don't know, feverish mind, saw a image, and then she felt fine, and she walked out, and she's like, hey, I'm hungry. And it was like a miracle, right? And so she went around to all these churches looking for what, and she found St. Teresa. And at a church, and she said, you know, if I ever have a daughter, I'm going to name her St. I'm not saying, I'm going to name her Teresa. She is St. No, I'm not. And so that's where Teresa came from. And Sines is my married name, and originally Sines was S-A-E-N-Z. But in Mexico, you see S-A-E-N-C, but we spell it S-A-I, which is more from Spain. And so, anyway.
See, you got a chance to explore your origins. Next.
You have to. Sure. So my name is Meredith Myra Thompson. Meredith, my parents met somebody who named Meredith a few weeks before I was born, and so that's why I got that name. But it's a Welsh name, and it means protector of the sea, because Mer is like sea, or mar, yeah, like that. And Myra is my great-grandmother's name, and I don't know any more about Myra. And then Thompson is my family name. It's very English, but
At least you know where it comes from.
I know where it comes from.
My name is Julian Copes Corbin. Julian is my dad's name, so I was named after him. It's spelled French. It's the French way. If I'd been born one day later, I would have been Ian, because they had a friend who had the birthday that was the day after mine, and his name was Ian, so they were going to name me after him if I was born on the same day as him. Copes is my mom's last name. Corbin is my married name. My husband and I blended our names. And so it used to be Colvin. His last name was Rivenbark. And so we took the CO from Colvin and the RVEN from Rivenbark and just meshed them together. So that's where that came from.
All right. All right. So
Where's your name from?
My name. Well, I am Antoinette Marie Davis, and my mother, bless her heart, when she was getting ready to give birth, she was still between ideas on what she wanted to name me. I was going to be her final child, and she had remembered a wonderful story of Marie Antoinette, but of course we all know she had a bad ending. She was beheaded. So my mother thought, I don't want to name my child after someone who's been beheaded. So her and my father agreed that they would name me the reverse, Antoinette Marie Davis. So that's where they got it from. So in this group activity, we got a chance to know each other. We got a chance to find out where our cultures come from, where we interrelate. This is something that we need to do in classrooms. Okay? Now, another group activity, still keeping going with cultural competence. What does it mean? Have you ever is another game that you can play in your classrooms to try to figure out things that you've done, things that somebody else has done, or things that you like, things that someone else doesn't like. Okay? And it's more like a catch-22, because you may not have done everything, but you've done at least one of those things. Okay? By show of hands, how many people have lived overseas for at least 1 year? All right. See, that's 1, 2. Okay? 2 out of 5. How many people have ever sung karaoke? See, that's more people. So karaoke is more important than flying or living overseas. Have you ever been without a shower for more than 2 weeks?
In my adult life or my kid life?
That would probably be a survival verse. Have you ever ridden a horse? I've never rode a horse. I really want to. Okay. Have you ever eaten frog's legs? How was it?
It tasted like chicken, but more fishy texture.
More jelly.
Yeah, like the texture of fish and the taste of chicken.
Have you ever been in love with someone who was a vegetarian? No one. Okay, so veganism is not popular in this group. Can you speak 3 or more languages?
Only phrases.
Is that 2? I have just that 1. Have you swam in 3 or more different oceans? Can you name them?
Yes.
Yes.
The
Tell me.
Pacific Ocean, the Mediterranean, the Atlantic Ocean.
All right. Same one?
Yeah.
Same. All right. Have you broken 3 or more bones in your body? Not at the same time.
Have we broken 3 bowls?
3 or more. You, 3 or more.
I break a lot of dishes.
Okay.
I'm just clumsy.
When I had foot surgery, they broke my bones.
Oh.
But that's
Oh,
part
broken
of
3
it.
or more bowls. I thought you said
Bones.
bowls.
Bones.
No, I haven't broken 3 or more bowls.
But we could include bones.
I've
That would
broken
be
1 bone.
1 bone.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to, you can add that 3 bowl question in there. These are all questions that you come up with. They also have a list online. This came from an online listing. Lastly, have you done volunteer work sometime in the last month? This group activity shows you that we all have differences, but we also have similarities as well. Okay? All of these coincide in the classroom. Oftentimes, due to the lack of knowledge, teachers, students, administrators, there's a disconnect, and our students sometimes come from various cultures and they feel isolated because they don't know where they belong in the classroom. Based on these games and group activities that we play, you'll be able to see different ways that you can bridge the gap between students in your classroom. Okay? It may not be all one culture in the classroom. Even if it looks that way, everybody still has that difference. Okay? More training. We talked about professional development in the previous section. More professional development needs to be done between K-12 and university on cultural competence and what it means to our students. What does it mean to have diverse classrooms and have everyone appreciated and accepted? Any questions?
That's great. I'm going to go back and do heavy lifting.
I like the
My
name
very diverse students.
I like the
Alright.
name one. I think the name one is awesome. I'll try these with my students too. This is cool.
And there's lots of games online.
Now, I'm curious as to what, we should cut. So your math
Yes.
teacher, so they're not expecting this. How do you incorporate this into your classrooms and what do your students, what's their reaction?
Well, normally I go through a content section. For example, if I talk about factory, I go through that section, we do questions, we do answer, we do group activities.
Okay.
At the end of the class, we do things like this, just to kind of bring everybody back in. It's a way to not make math seem so serious, and it gives them a way to have some fun as well. Other questions?
I got to get ready to go do math.
So one of the things I wanted to focus on is listening to the needs of online teachers, and so preparing educators for online environments. And I think what is important is that we have research that really leverages the voice of the experts themselves, and those are the teachers who are actually doing the teaching in online settings. So there have been a number of articles and research, and especially those of you who are already here, a lot of your work as well, that has given voice to what are these needs of online teachers, how can we meet these needs, how can we learn from the needs that they're expressing to prepare teachers who are going into the field. So that's really what I think for me is important, and having been a teacher myself, I feel that research that can look at the voices and we can learn from the teachers themselves, and then we can address coursework in higher education to meet those needs. I think that we can develop research that really leverages the unique characteristics of teachers in online settings, understanding what the challenges are that they face, how can we address development and courses within higher education to meet their needs, as well as developing and refining and validating standards. There's a lot of different standards out there. So you've got the ISTE nets, I may call online teaching standards, quality matters, K-12 online teachers. So this is a few years back, but I looked at over 600 responses from teachers from across 25 states, all different content areas. These are teachers online. And these were, this was an open-ended question, and it asked them, describe your overall experience with teaching online K-12 students. So I'm going to focus on the needs part of this. So certainly there was a lot of positive aspects with it, but there were also the challenges. And so that's what I want to focus on today is the challenges. So they broke into kind of three main themes when you did the qualitative analysis. So one of the major areas was time and time management. I think we all feel this no matter what level you're at. You know, if you're in higher education, if you're in K-12, time is certainly a challenge. They expressed that they were spending more time online than they had in the face-to-face classroom. There wasn't a clear boundary between when they're teaching online and especially if they're when working from home, there wasn't a clear kind of stop and start. It was on 24/7 and they felt the need to respond to students at all times. And along with that, having it being frustrating and overwhelming and kind of impeding that work-life balance. So time was a major factor. Another issue was content. So this was talking about not having control over the content. And this was a cause for frustration. So they weren't seen as designers. They were given some kind of content that was developed maybe by subject matter experts or developed by some company, and they couldn't make changes or they couldn't use their creativity to develop the content themselves. That was another barrier. And then finally, the next major theme was student issues. So the fact that they expressed that not every student was suited for online education, especially those who might have special needs. There might be, and it seemed like there was a disparity between being high performance and dropping out. So they really had difficulty in meeting student needs and having students from all different levels and how do they differentiate instruction, much like you would in a face-to-face classroom, have that challenge as well. So I wanted to share with you some of the actual voices from the teachers themselves. So these are kind of just some examples expressing the challenge. So these are all separate teachers that express the relationship to time. So we have one teacher saying that teaching online I feel is much harder than any type of teaching position that I've had in the past. And it takes a lot of preparation and decision making. And another teacher shared that it was a wonderful opportunity for her students, but it takes much more time than when I was in the classroom. So I thought this was a unique thing, especially that higher education could address, is how can we leverage time management strategies? What is it that's taking so much time in the online environment that is, it seems like it's a unique phenomenon in the online setting than as compared to the traditional face-to-face classroom, that you 3 p.m. and then you've got, the rest of your evening, you're not dealing necessarily with student issues all the time, but on the online setting you might be. Another teacher said I work harder now than ever before. No 2 years are ever the same. As well as busy, demanding with enormous caseload, but also gratifying as any teaching can be. And she also expressed the student issue, the most stressful part of retaining all the students since withdrawal rates are constantly in flux. So really this critical issue of time and how do we manage it in the online setting. With relationship to content, and this is interesting because we're starting to look at instructional design issues with respect to online teaching. This teacher expressed the concern that I'm not the creator of the lesson plan or the course design. I have no authority to change or create anything for my students. So getting at the notion of, is this teacher really the expert in the classroom, or have they been handed this set of curriculum that they're just expected to implement? That's a challenge. And then also expressing that some of the teachers felt that the online school is very poor, the curriculum at the online school is very poor, that they spend much of their time rewriting it while they're teaching. So looking at these issues of content and classroom management, I'm just going to move forward. Last one is, the last theme is student issues, that they're just meeting the needs of students from various levels, and how do they do that in the online environment. It seems that students either really do really well or just don't do anything at all, so kind of that all or nothing disparity. So I think, what does this mean? I think that what it They need preparation that emphasizes demands for time and addressing time management. We need to consider content providers that might allow teachers more flexibility to share their creativity, to develop their own lesson ideas, to make corrections and revisions if they see things that are wrong, instead of having to submit this to 3 different layers and it takes forever to make those changes. Also, meeting the needs of students with special needs. So it might include students with disabilities, as well as those students that might be at risk. How do we do that in an online environment? So working to understand the skills that are needed, I think continued research is needed to understand the evolving needs of K-12 teachers, and specifically qualitative approaches that give voice to the teachers, that we go to the teachers, we ask them, what do you need? What can we provide? How can we help you? Rather than just providing content that we think they need. But how can we kind of use a use-inspired research model so that we are developing coursework and professional development that really does address the challenges that they're facing. Also, continued study to validate a cohesive set of online teaching standards. This is something that we're still trying to come to some type of agreement. What are the skills, knowledge, and dispositions that teachers need to be able to be successful in the online environment? And then how can institutions of higher education, and those of us who are in teacher education, develop coursework as well as field experiences that can be part of teacher preparation in order to help teachers be successful. And I think it's really those approaches that give voice to online teachers that are important, and we need more of this research along these lines. And just as a shameless plug, Jared and I are editors of the Journal of Online Learning Research. So if you're doing work in this area, this is an AACE journal. We would love to have your submission. It's an open access journal, and so we're looking to, I especially would be interested in qualitative work that gives voice to the needs of online teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. That was actually very exciting. So where Leanna is focused on the kind of qualitative approach to finding out about teacher needs, specifically I've moved over to looking at data and how data can help inform effective PD practice. But first I'm just going to talk a little bit about so I started, I was asked to create a course to train online teachers for a privately managed online charter school back in about 2006. And at the time, there were very few online teacher programs. And so my first question was, well, what skills do they need, right, to be able to teach effectively online? And that started to generate in me ideas for research, of course. So some of my research was focused on the particular skills and dispositions needed by online teachers, some of the challenges that they face. I was really interested in finding out about where they're getting their training, how they're getting their training, who's providing the training, what kind of training are they receiving, all those types of questions. And then I eventually moved on to, okay, we know what they need, we know what they're getting, do we know how effective that training is? So I don't know if you can see this, it's actually for me more than you because I can't remember everything I've done over the years, but it started out early on as just a national survey looking at the status of professional development of K-12 online teachers, who was doing what and where and when, and then trying to decipher their unique needs and challenges. In the third year, we were asked to do a large-scale program evaluation, so that I started looking at, how do we determine effectiveness in kind of traditional ways for PD? How do we know it's effective? And then revisited the status of PD again in 2010, and then in the last few years I've been really working on using data mining to help us figure out how we can determine if PD is effective and what impact it may have on the students that these teachers are teaching. So in terms of preparation, and this is just reiterating what was said before, we know that many new online teachers get no training at all. We know that most training occurs through the organization, so the workplace that they're hired from, so 94% at that time, this would be in 2010, of teachers received their training from the organization and not from an institution of higher ed. So university training usually occurred at a master's level, so a higher level, but not pre-service training. We also learned that online teacher training is contextual, so it really depends on the model and the philosophy of the school itself or the program itself. We learned that administrators lack awareness of how to even evaluate whether an online teacher is effective. And we learned that the focus of training is on technology skills and not on pedagogy. So I think this is a really important focus for pre-service teacher training and educators to know what's happening and where the specific needs are. The top 10 challenges, and I love how time management keeps coming up. So that's really informative. It's like, okay, pre-service teacher trainers, this is one area that online teachers really need help with. And it actually moves over to blended learning as well. So as blended becomes more and more mainstream, we're going to see more need for these types of challenges to be addressed. Student responsibility and student agency, technology skills, how to communicate with parents and students online, parental support, isolation, those kinds of things. So I'm going to move quickly. One of the kind of predominant themes in all of my research has been a need for online teachers to receive training that models what they should be doing instead of telling them what they should be doing. So that's really critical, and we have a real lack of that in higher education settings, especially in terms of teacher education. And so then moving on to leveraging data systems, my thinking was how can we use the data that we collect in learning management systems to inform us about the impact of teacher training on teachers and then on their students, and what would that look like? And my focus happens to be on engagement. Are we engaging teachers in online teacher training? Are they engaged? How are they engaged? How do we know they're engaged? If they're engaged, does that change their teaching practice, right? What impact does it have on the quantity and quality of their interaction in their own classes, and then on their course design, if they have the ability to design courses? And then what's the impact on student outcomes? So I'm going to quickly go over just some data mining information. So very quickly, one of the first studies we did was on teacher PD workshops, looking at the data in the learning management system and triangulating that with survey questions and with their outcomes from their courses. And just some things that we found in general through different analyses. Higher support and confidence ratings for learning paths that included discussion forums as well as content area access. So the more interactive a course was for a teacher, the more support and confidence they had for moving through different parts of the course. Cluster analysis, so what I really found interesting is that self-report data aligned quite well with what we observed in actual behavior. So what they reported was very well aligned to their behaviors in a course. But we did notice that they perceived more time spent online than actually showed up in the data itself. Online teaching experience equaled higher engagement in the course, but taking a course as a student didn't have a relationship with their engagement level. And then more time spent online, plus this greater impact of frequency equaled improved outcomes. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute in the next slide. So that was specifically focused on teacher PD. Overall, in the studies that we've done, and I have the reference to this list here in my department, we've done probably 7 different data mining studies. Engagement is a significant factor in prediction for performance. High engaged students perform better than low engaged students. But what's really critical is that the type of engagement matters. So it's not necessarily the length of time they spend online, it's how frequently they access their courses. So the more frequently and consistently they access their courses, the more engaged they are with the content and with the instructor. And satisfaction doesn't always equate to higher performance. So it's really critical, and typically when we evaluate PD, we look at satisfaction, and it really has no relationship to quality. Let me go back to this one again, because let me look at my notes real quick. So I just want to reemphasize that I think how this informs higher ed is this link between engagement and teacher PD and how they manage and maintain their engagement in their own courses. So is there a link between their own engagement and activity and PD, and then what that looks like in their own classes. And then does it also impact the outcomes of the learners that they teach? Finally, these are just some predictors that we've found in multiple studies. Gender tends to be pretty consistent. Females do better than males, not always. And this is across the board in both K-12 and in higher education, that these tend to be predictors of success. And I just want to emphasize that information like this should be used to help teachers in pre-service programs be able to better support their students in online courses versus profiling what particular students might perform better in an online course versus not. And so this idea of ethics in data mining is also another conversation, I think, that higher education need to have with pre-service teachers. There's a list of references. Thank you so much.
I'm Maggie Neese. I'm going to switch your thinking a little bit to what I'm interested in, and that's using online educational environments to prepare any teacher or any in-service and pre-service, and even use it in professional development. So this blending an online learning trajectory with practice-based learning experiences. This is a project that I was hired to do, and my research group and I designed an online Masters of Science program in math education and science education to prepare in-service teachers, for teaching math and science with technologies. And that's what my research had been in teaching with technology. So they said, Maggie, you can do this. This is no problem for you at all. And I said, you want me to do what? And they said, we want you to design an online, totally online master's degree program. I said, I'm a teacher educator. I have to do it face to face. They said, no, you will do this online. So we went into this with me digging my feet in the other direction, saying, I don't think this is going to happen. But as a researcher and with an interest in preparing teachers to teach with technology, we began this program with the belief that we had to do it all online. Well, we discovered the value of blending an online learning trajectory and course with teacher engagement, with them doing a practice-based learning experience so that they were actually teaching in their classrooms. And that's what we focused on. And let's see if I can do what you said. Okay, this is how we began. We identified the framework for our online program, and it's a social, metacognitive, constructivist framework that we were going to use. Okay, and this was because we wanted to support the 4 C's: creative thinking, critical thinking, communication, and collaboration. These basic skills that are coming out now, we thought, well, okay, we want to support that. And we need a social, metacognitive, constructivist framework in order to do those kinds of things. So that's where we began. So we developed an online learning trajectory, and this online learning trajectory had 2 important tools that were critical to make this work. Particularly for the communication and the collaboration. As the teachers we wanted to engage them in rethinking teaching with technology. So we wanted them to be a community of learners, and that meant we wanted them working together as as a community, as a social organization that used that social metacognitive constructivist idea. They were organized that way, and an additional tool was the reflection. Reflection has been found to be so critical to teacher knowledge development that it became a critical tool here, where we wanted them to not only reflect on what they were learning in the courses that they were taking, but we also wanted them to reflect on how they were learning and what that, and they were learning in an online learning environment, so we had them reflecting on that as well. The processes for this online learning trajectory, there were two, again, it's sort of like we made it up with 2 and 2. We wanted to value both shared and individual knowledge development as they worked in this as a community of learners. And so often teachers come to you and say, well, it's cheating if I get an idea from you. We quickly wanted that gone, and so that the community of learners could really share ideas and share thinking. And so that was an important process that was going to happen. The second process is inquiry, and that was in respect to critical thinking and creative thinking in the 4 C's. And so we wanted to be able to have them involved in inquiry activities where they constructed their understanding as they engaged as a community of learners. So here's sort of how we envision this learning trajectory interaction. The tools, the processes, were interacting dynamically with the content that we would teach in each of these courses. And we thought of it as a dynamic interaction that as they interact, as those things interacted, the teachers were developing the different content as they progressed along this trajectory and developing this content. So this is basically, this is my visual of the learning trajectory and to show the dynamic interaction. Now, then there was this challenge of practice-based classroom experiences. How can we get them to do that? They're online teachers, and we've got teachers from all over the world. How are we going to do this? You know, this picture tells you what a lot of people believe, and that's the distance between online learning and face-to-face instruction is pretty dangerous to proceed through. Well, we decided to ignore that and considered blending the experiences. And what we wanted to do was to take the online collaboration with the community of learners, where they investigated different instructional strategies for teaching with technologies. And they talked about that. They did different inquiries about, gee, which would be the best activities? How can we have should we have a student-centered classroom? What kind of instruction should we be using when we do this? Then, at the same time, they're taking that course, they're doing that, they are actually in their own classrooms. They're all over the world. In fact, that's right where they are. And they're to practice some of these instructional technologies. So that was the design of this one course. And what we wanted to do, and what we did do, was blend the experiences. The online collaboration was the community of learners. They did small group exploration. The inquiry was instructional strategies for teaching with technologies. They posted their recommendations to the whole class, so that it's a small to the large whole class. I'm going to make it. And they also peer-reviewed each other's scoop portfolios. Now, you'll know what that is. The scoop portfolios were something that was developed through their practice-based experiences. In the practice-based experiences, they were required to plan, teach, and assess a 5-day unit in which they integrated technology in their content, math or science. They videotaped and analyzed 2 of their lessons. They analyzed student work all 5 days and found the high, medium, and low, and analyzed what was going on and what was working. They reflected on that. And basically, this was called the Scoop electronic portfolio, and it contained the Scoop artifacts that had pictures, that had all their reflections and so on, and continued. It was like this, but it was an electronic portfolio. Then they would have the peer review, and they would get reflections back from their partners in this online portion. Now, basically, what we ended up with, I was asked to write the research that went on through this actually it was about 5 years of research developing this online program. And this is the book that they asked me to write this last year. It just came out. And what it does is it talks about the different kinds of the learning trajectory, the Scoop portfolio, and all of that. It has examples of what we did in the classroom in that. And if you have any interest in it, IGI gave me some forms that you can get a 30% discount. And when I saw the price, I thought, and they also gave me a form for the library recommendations, so your libraries, you could give that to your library and they could get a reduction. Anyway, see me later about that.
Okay, well, I am coming at this from an entirely different perspective, immensely different. So let me give you my background, because I think that will help. I've been in higher education teaching as an affiliate or as a full-time ranked faculty for over 21 years. And at Regis, we started developing and doing online courses through our information systems, computer science programs very, very quickly because we wanted to adopt the technology that we think is awesome. So I'm coming at this from the perspective of someone that is developing online courses, teaching online courses, and has no formal educational background. And that's what we have in most of our non-teacher education programs at most colleges and universities. So we definitely need to work together because it's really difficult. So I want to touch on a couple of things, and based on our speakers' comments, I'm going to propose an idea later. So I've not only taught and developed courses online for Regis, but several other universities that some are 100% online and others are traditional universities that then went into the online area doing curriculum development because somehow I got it and I was a subject matter expert in that content area. So I sought out you all to help me do this in a very non-formal way. So enough about that. So my whole concept here is coming at this from a non-educator's perspective. It really takes a village. There's so much infrastructure and so many different groups within the context of teacher ed, whether it's K-12 or at the university college level, that needs to be in place, and everybody needs to be working together to deliver high quality online education. Obviously there's the faculty, and one of the key things is what we've seen is great classroom-based faculty do not translate into great online faculty.
and sometimes it's disastrous. And part of it is the lack of training and support of those great, highly motivated faculty who want to do online, but they haven't gotten the support nor training that are needed. When I talk about colleagues with best practices ideas, we have an amazing teacher ed and a school of education at Regis. And actually, I came here and met Rebecca with Edgewood University in Madison, who actually said, oh, we went and visited you guys in Denver and learned about your teacher education online mentoring program, so we could put it in our online teacher education certification program back in our college. And I went, well, I want that. I wanted it, so I had to come to Austin to find out what we're doing in Denver. And I think that's the key thing, that I think we're all resource poor in some respects. We're all trying to do more with less. And I'm going to kind of skip to what kind of popped into my head as you all were talking is I think that I need to go back to my teacher ed program and figure out a way for those students in our teacher ed program to help us in the College of Computer and Information Sciences at least prototype how can we leverage the needs of the teacher ed students, particularly in the online environment, to help develop curriculum, analyze it, and work with our subject matter expert faculty, because we also use a ton of affiliate faculty, and start to leverage students who need hands-on experiences to start to help us be better online educators and set up those systems and things like that. And if anybody's doing that, I would love to see how you're doing it. So I think one of the key things when it comes to the village is understanding who's doing what in your university, or even our K-12 through our School of Education. From our college and department, we need to have a training budget, because some of the things that you all are talking about that you get to do as educators, and the amount of training is phenomenal. Because as a subject matter expert, that just gets thrown in and go, do your best. It's intimidating, to say the least. This is very qualitative information. This is not research. I think the other key thing when we think about a village and how we all need to work together, we a lot of times, particularly at my university, we sometimes let the coolest, latest tool drive important curriculum and delivery methods, instead of stepping back and understanding what should be driving the tool. And sometimes the simplest technological tool is really the best. So we have to be working with instructional design and our ITS department with making sure we're delivering the right IT infrastructure. The other thing is it costs money to have a good, robust learning management system, to be able to data mine that, to be able to implement different things, and there needs to have that commitment, both from a infrastructure and monetary commitment from your organization. So the other thing, I'm just going to end here, I know it's short, but what I found was the NEA has a guide to teaching online courses, and I have it linked here. To me, all of the information there was extremely important and valid, and it talks about infrastructure and different things like that, and it talked about teacher preparation. Let's